Now that we have learned to identify and classify polynomials, let's take a look at adding and subtracting. Now, adding and subtracting polynomials is pretty much just combining like terms. And to prep us for subtraction, I'm going to go ahead and explain how there's a quote unquote an understood positive one in front of this trinomial as well as this trinomial. So I'm going to distribute the positive one, and the reason I'm doing that is to dissolve the parentheses. And for me, it helps me when I'm doing especially my subtracting polynomials. But there are several ways you could look at this, but this is the way I'm going to share. So now I'm just simply going to combine my like terms, and my quadratics are 3x squared and minus 7x squared. Always look in front of the term to find what kind of sign that the term takes. So this gives me negative 4x squared. And then I have my linear terms, and that gives me minus 5x. And then my constant is plus 2 minus 4, which is negative 2. And here we have a quadratic trinomial. Quadratic because it has a degree of 2, and trinomial because we have 3 terms. Now let's take a look at subtracting polynomials. So it's the same concept. I have an understood positive one in front of this trinomial. However, here, because we're subtracting, we have that understood negative one. So to dissolve the parentheses, I'm just going to distribute the positive one. And now I'm going to distribute this negative one to every term in this trinomial, and it changes the sign of each term. Now we're just going to combine like we did before. So we have 10x squared minus 3x for my linear term, and then my constants give me plus 6. So again, we have a quadratic because of the degree of 2, trinomial because we have 3 terms. Okay, guys, pause the video, write these in your notebook, and when we come back, we'll go over them together. Okay, on number 1, we have addition. So I'm simply going to write out all my terms with no parentheses. Again, if you have a different way you want to do it, that is fine by me. And then our linear terms, so that gives me minus 3x. Again, notice the operation in front of the term. And then our constants gives me a minus 2. So we have a quadratic trinomial. Number 2, we have to be careful because this time we will be distributing this negative 1 to each of these terms. So again, it just changes your term value to the opposite sign. So let's make sure that's right. That's going to be a positive, a negative, a positive. Okay, now our quadratic terms gives us 14x squared. Our linear terms gives me minus 11x. And then you can see the negative 1 and the positive 1. That gives us 0. So this time we have a quadratic still, but it's just a binomial. And then our last practice problem, we are going to subtract. So we are going to distribute the negative 1, changing every term to its opposite. Now we combine. When I combine my quadratics, I get negative 2x squared. My linear term gives me 15x, and then the constant terms, gives me plus 7. So we have a quadratic trinomial. Now let's take a look at application. We are going to determine the perimeter of each of these shapes, and then we're going to add the perimeters of both and then find the difference of each shape. So remember, perimeter is adding all sides of an object. So we have 4x squared minus x plus 3. Then we have 5x squared plus 4x minus 8. And our third side is 4x squared. Whoops, I forgot to put my plus here, sorry. 4x squared plus 6x plus 1. Now, all together, and this may be more writing out than you may do, but just to keep consistent with how I'm sharing. Now we're going to be combining all like terms. So let's start with our quadratic terms. So we have 4 and 5, that's 9, and 4 is 13x squared. Then we have our linear terms. So 6x and 4x is 10, and then we have minus 1, so that's plus 9x. And then we have positive 3, minus 8, plus 1. So 1 and 3 is 4, and 4 minus 8 is minus 4. So we have a quadratic trinomial for the perimeter of the triangle. For our rectangle, you can see these tick marks. This single tick mark says that these two sides are the same, and this double tick mark, these two sides. So we can do this two ways. We can say we have two widths, and I know that we're getting into like multiplication, which will come later, but I think you can see this. Plus, the perimeter of a rectangle has two widths and then two lengths. If you just wanted to use your shape and write out around the shape and combine, that's totally fine. Now I'm going to distribute this 2. So we have 6x squared plus 16x minus 6. And then we have plus 12x squared minus 4x plus 14. And now we can combine since we no longer have parentheses. So my quadratic term is 18x squared. Our linear term is going to be plus 12x. And then the constant is going to give me plus 8. So now we have the perimeter of the rectangle. And now we're going to add these because it wanted the sum, and I need to add, let's see what this was on the triangle. This is a plus here, so excuse me for that. Okay, so we have 13x squared plus 9x minus 4 plus 18x squared plus 12x plus 8. So we have the perimeters of both, and it said to find the sum. This says difference, but it should say sum. So let's combine and our quadratics, and we're going to get 31x squared, and then the linear terms, that's going to give me plus 21x, and then we have our constant, and that gives me plus 4. Okay, now we're finding the difference, and let's add in that plus again. So this time we are going to distribute again just the positive 1 out front, but now we're going to distribute this negative 1 to every term. And now let's combine. Quadratics, I'm going to subtract because we have this negative, so it's negative 5x squared. We have our linear term, so that gives me minus 3x. And then we have minus 4 and minus 8, that's minus 12.